The U.S. 119th Congress is like Taiwan's EJO emergency call, summoning the fire department to fight the burning Democratic camp. But surprisingly, not a single Taiwanese media outlet reported on it. They seem to be focusing the majority of their attention on two other Taiwan-related bills. This time, the U.S. House of Representatives passed a bill that has absolutely nothing to do with Taiwan, but I believe it is the most important for Taiwan. And after you see this, I believe a lot of Taiwanese people, myself included, are going to be left saying, Taiwan needs this too, yo.
Pretty please, with sugar on top.
So, because you're about to see a very useful weapon that Taiwan needs from the U.S. to use against those so-called politicians and political parties who want to cozy on up to the CCP, shake hands, and even more than that with Xi Jinping. Because for you, your family, and mine, 真的是代志大条。妈的。So, just 3 days ago, the U.S. House of Representatives live streamed the 119th Congress for 9 whole hours, and I watched it all. And guess which country they name dropped the most?
China. China. I have to have my China.
China has become Congress's main villain. The bills proposed by Republicans are almost all targeting them.
Mr. Speaker, we gather today to confront one of the most unconscionable human rights atrocities of our time. It's amazing that we have to speak about this. The state-sponsored forced harvesting of human organs. Innocent people, often prisoners of conscience, are being killed so that their vital organs can be removed and sold. This is a billion-dollar black market built on murder. It's a direct assault on every principle of human dignity and decency. H.R. 1503, the Stop Forced Organ Harvesting Act of 2025, is a bipartisan moral imperative. It holds perpetrators accountable and targets the heart of this depraved industry. The bill sends a clear message: the United States will not be complicit. If you take part in forced organ harvesting, we are coming after you. It imposes strong sanctions, strengthens reporting requirements, and authorizes the denial and revocation of passports for convicted traffickers who cross borders to commit these crimes. I would say that's the least that we could be doing. The legislation rightly identifies those responsible, including members of the Chinese Communist Party, who have been credibly accused by human rights organizations and UN experts for orchestrating systemic, state-run organ harvesting, primarily targeting prisoners of conscience from religious and ethnic minority groups. This is not speculation. The evidence is overwhelming. International investigations, eyewitness testimony, and growing data confirm that these abuses are occurring on a massive scale. They are crimes against humanity.
And recently on Taiwanese threads, a lot of people started believing that China's forced organ harvesting is real, all because of a Taiwanese singer named Tank, who traveled to China and received both a heart and liver transplant at the same time.
That's crazy, man.
Well, Threads is the only one looking at China sideways because America feels the exact same way. And now they've created a congressional bill to express it.
H.R. 1503 shines a light on this horrible practice and calls on the State Department to make its annual reporting on the issue more robust and more in-depth. Not only does it call for more regular assessments of the problem, it also authorizes the imposition of sanctions on individuals that are involved in forced organ harvesting or trafficking. The legislation will make sure the U.S. is carefully gathering all the facts to make an informed assessment on the magnitude and prevalence of this problem and developing appropriate responses. The trafficking of persons for the purpose of organ removal is a form of trafficking in which an individual is exploited for their organs, including by coercion, deception, and abuse of a position of vulnerability. It's abhorrent, repugnant, and dehumanizing. I support this legislation and urge all of my colleagues to likewise support it. Again, this Congress, I reserve the balance of my time.
Fun fact, this bill was passed unanimously with bipartisan support. No opposition at all. Now, I could be wrong, but it seems to me like this bill is specifically targeting China.
Madam Speaker, I rise in support for H.R. 1486, the Economic Espionage Prevention Act, introduced by my colleague from Georgia, Mr. McCormick. The Chinese Communist Party is working to undermine America's interests around the world and is the global supplier of America's adversaries. As President Trump and his administration are working tirelessly to finally bring an end to the war in Ukraine, the CCP continues to stoke global chaos by providing massive amounts of industrial and economic support to Russia. In fact, our State Department assessed that in the second half of 2023 alone, China supported the transfer of nearly $300 million worth of semiconductors to Russia, including for use in missiles and drones. The CCP's actions are blatant violations of U.S. export controls and detrimental to our ongoing peace efforts. China's economic and industrial support for Russia is a critical lifeline for the Russian military. This is why it is critical that Congress pass the Economic Espionage Prevention Act. This bill will provide important sanctions authorities for cutting off the CCP's illegal industrial supply chains to America's adversaries.
Bill H.R. 1486, aimed at the CCP support for the Russian invasion of Ukraine, was passed with more than two-thirds of representative support.
Speaker, I rise in support of H.R. 1316. Over the past 6 years, export controls have become a crucial tool for our national security and foreign policy to respond to the challenges posed by Russia, China, Iran, and others. Our use of export controls have become more and more frequent and more complicated as we have started to apply novel controls in critical technology areas such as semiconductors and AI. While this change in U.S. export control policy has taken place, congressional consultation and oversight has not kept up. The bill in front of us today by Representative Jackson is an important step towards remedying this problem by calling for the Commerce Department's Bureau of Industry and Security, BIS, to conduct greater transparency around license application information and conduct checks for problematic companies in arms-embargoed nations. This bill will also enable Congress to conduct better oversight to ensure that BIS licensing and enforcement processes are working properly and efficiently. This bill will ensure that the Foreign Affairs Committee is getting the information it needs on export control policy and implementation while protecting business proprietary information and allowing BIS to effectively execute its core national security mandate.
Then there's Bill H.R. 1316, another one aimed at China's theft of U.S. AI chips, and this one also passed with more than two-thirds support. Now, it is no new thing that America likes to create bills that target China, but these next two have really pissed off the Red Dragon the most.
I rise today in support of my bill, H.R. 1512, the Taiwan Assurance Implementation Act. Mr. Speaker, it is undeniable that the People's Republic of China is the single gravest threat to our national security. It is undeniable that China has increased its destabilizing military activities in the Pacific. And it is undeniable that China has its sights set on the full-scale invasion of Taiwan. The United States must not waver in our deterrence of this threat and our support for this nation.
Oh, in case you didn't notice, when she said support this nation refers to us, Taiwan. More and more U.S. congresswomen and men are directly referring to Taiwan as a country out in the open.
For decades, our nation employed a strategy of opacity, restricting our formal engagement with Taiwan to avoid upsetting or insulting the Chinese Communist Party. In 2020, this body enacted the Taiwan Assurance Act, and the first Trump administration moved decisively to implement this new policy by declaring all self-imposed restrictions null and void. Unfortunately, the Biden administration waffled and rolled back many of these diplomatic standards. And under my legislation, all administrations now and into the future will be required to periodically update these regulations specifically with the goal of deepening and expanding the U.S.-Taiwan relations. We must stand shoulder to shoulder with our partners in the Pacific to deter the Chinese threat. And I am proud to say that enacting this legislation, the Taiwan Assurance Implementation Act, will be a decisive step forward to ensuring peace through strength.
Now, the congresswoman who gave us a direct shout out is Ann Louise Wagner. I've pinned her X and IG account in the comments. 你们台湾人可以去打个招呼，按个赞，还有追踪。
Mr. Speaker, I rise in strong support of the Taiwan International Solidarity Act, a vital update to the Taipei Act that reflects both the realities of today's global landscape and the urgency of standing up to the Chinese Communist Party, as we've spoke about in length today. This amendment makes clear that the United States, as a participant in any international organization, must actively oppose attempts by the CCP to distort the policies, the procedures, or the language of those institutions in order to manipulate Taiwan's status. Let me be blunt, Beijing has waged a systemic campaign to erase Taiwan from the international stage. From the World Health Organization to the International Civil Aviation Organization, the CCP has bullied, bribed, and pressured global institutions and countries into sidelining Taiwan, despite Taiwan's clear qualifications and its contributions to global health, security, and commerce. Few examples illustrate the Chinese Communist Party's deceptive tactics more clearly than its distortion of UN Resolution 2758.
UN Resolution 2758 is one of the main reasons Taiwan is suppressed internationally. And another is because of former President Nixon's Shanghai Communique. 但我们不要急好不好? One at a time. Let's first solve the Resolution 2758 situation, and then we'll talk about Nixon's Shanghai situation.
To be clear, there is no justification in the UN General Assembly Resolution 2758 for Taiwan's continued exclusion from international bodies. The resolution only established the government of the PRC as a representative for China at the UN. It did nothing to define or determine a role for Taiwan. This bill codifies what has long been the United States' position, to oppose Beijing's actions in misinterpreting and distorting UN Resolution 2758, and to enable the United States to empower our partners to resist Beijing's overtures or reduce or sever relations with Taiwan. Taiwan is a friend, a vibrant democracy, and a force for good in the world. And in this Congress, on a bipartisan basis, we will continue to push for its inclusion in global dialogue.
Fun fact, these two Taiwan-related bills passed with more than 2/3 of congressional approval. But some of you, like myself, might be wondering, 所以呢，还有什么呢？牛肉在哪？这个怎么帮助台湾？感觉很舒服，但是我还不确定这个舒服点在哪里耶。
Maybe?
You might be right to feel this way. After all, these two bills have more of a declarative effect than a practical function. But then there's Bill H.R. 1512, which has a lot of attitude, telling the U.S. government, hey, U.S. officials ain't got nothing to worry about angering China. Link up with Taiwan as much as possible. But there's no mandatory regulation, and Bill H.R. 2416 is like, hey China, stop the bullshit. Taiwan don't belong to you. Both bills are attitudes, declarations rather than regulations. But these declarations are important because future policies will be derived from these attitudes, like Taiwan establishing diplomatic relations with the U.S.
Tight, yeah!
Well, coming up next, you're about to see the bill that I consider the most important that Taiwan needs from the U.S. House of Representatives. And it is more than likely going to make a lot of Taiwanese politicians 很不舒服 because for them, 真的是代志大条。
I would agree, and you talked about it earlier, it's the KMT, and it is the KMT, by the way. They control the legislature. It's different from the president's party. They're playing a dangerous game on their defense budget. If anyone from Taiwan is watching this hearing, they need to realize they're playing a dangerous game. Okay, cutting defense spending right now is not the right signal. We all agree with that.
Do you remember not too long ago at the cabinet hearing when U.S. representatives directly called out Taiwan's Kuomintang for cutting the budget? Well, the country of Georgia is experiencing something very similar, where the ruling party president and the majority party in Congress belong to completely different opposing parties. The president leaning towards the more democratic system, while the main party in Congress leans towards a pro-Chinese authoritarian regime.
Chairman is recognized.
Madam Speaker, the Republic of Georgia was once a prime contender for NATO and an ally of the United States, especially following Russia's 2008 invasion. The United States benefited from military and intelligence cooperation, and the Georgian people are well known for their pro-American sentiment. Unfortunately, our bilateral relationship with Georgia has been eroded by the ruling Georgia Dream Party's moves that mimic Russia's authoritarian tactics, as well as their rapprochement with China and Iran. The opportunities provided by pro-Western democratic Georgia are manifest. Georgia's strategic location on the Black Sea makes it a pivotal nation for trade through the Middle Corridor to Central Asia and can be a counterbalance to Iran and Russian influence in the region. I support this bipartisan bill introduced by Mr. Wilson because it takes an America First approach to the Republic of Georgia. This bill will impose sanctions on regime officials for their roles in undermining Georgia's sovereignty and pro-Western trajectory, as well as review our bilateral relationship, including assistance programs, and require a report that spotlights Russian intelligence actions in Georgia.
This is Bill H.R. 36, fully named the Mobilizing and Enhancing Georgia's Options for Building Accountability, Resilience, and Independence Act, abbreviated as MEGOBARI, which means friend in Georgian. But let's just call it H.R. 36.
Georgian Dream has moved swiftly to criminalize association with America since the election of October 26. It rejected bids by American companies for construction of their strategic deep-sea port to the Chinese Communist Party. Every major building contract over $100 million U.S. have been awarded to the Chinese Communist Party or affiliated companies, or state-owned companies of the Chinese Communist Party. This blocks America from the Middle Corridor and cuts off land access to critical minerals in Central Asia, which additionally want to be friends of America and friends of Western civilization. The regime peddles in daily anti-American propaganda accusing top officials of the U.S. government, including President Trump and the very appreciated Senate Foreign Affairs Chairman Jim Risch, of corruption as actings of tools of the deep state. In fact, just last week, there was a statement by a government official that Donald Trump was a tool of the deep state.
Now, for my Taiwan Bingyu, this probably sounds really familiar. Taiwan social media is riddled with skepticism towards the US, including some politicians who publicly say they can't trust America, and some politicians who want to establish economic and trade zones between Taiwan and China. Now, I could be wrong, but this sounds exactly like Taiwan.
As ranking member of the Helsinki Commission, I'm proud to be the lead Democrat on the MEGOBARI bill, along with my friend Joe Wilson. This act will evaluate all Georgia Dream officials for sanctions. If they're found to have undermined Georgian democracy or engaged in corruption, they will be sanctioned. It also creates a report on Russian intelligence assets, in Georgia, and Russia-China cooperation to undermine Georgia's sovereignty. What's going on is basically a revolution where Ivanishvili, who runs the party and has investments in Russia, is trying to bring them closer to Russia and Putin. Lastly, the bill envisions a stronger U.S.-Georgia relationship once Georgia returns to its traditional Euro-Atlantic path mandated in its own constitution and demanded by its people. I want to thank Congressman Wilson and the other co-leads on this important legislation, Congressman Veazey and Hudson. I urge its passage, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Now, the key point of H.R. 36 is that if Georgian officials, including elected representatives, undermine the democratic system, they will face sanctions. So let's have a look at what H.R. 36 actually says.
This bill requires the president to impose sanctions on certain foreign persons, including Georgian government officials who are undermining Georgia's security or stability.
Now, you gotta understand that the way this is worded allows for a lot of different interpretation. The definitions of security and stability are left to be interpreted by the United States.
Specifically, the bill requires the president to impose visa blocking sanctions and authorizes the president to impose property blocking sanctions on any foreign person the president determines is involved with actions or policies to undermine Georgia's security or stability. Immediate family members of a sanctioned individual are also subject to these sanctions if they benefited from the sanctioned individual's conduct.
Now, I know a lot of politicians around the world own many assets in America, and many of them have family members who actually live in the U.S., and this bill would directly affect them.
Any individual who served as a member of the Georgian parliament or as a senior official of a Georgian political party on or after January 1st, 2014, any individual who is serving as an official in a leadership position on behalf of the Georgian government, and any immediate family member of such officials who benefited from their conduct. It also includes those who aren't officials but are representatives or political party members.
Now, the difference between H.R. 36 and those other two Taiwan-related bills is that this ain't just a declaration. It has actual, guaranteed consequences. So imagine if in the next few months, the U.S. passed a Taiwan version of H.R. 36.
I would agree, and you talked about it earlier. It's the KMT, and it is the KMT, by the way. They control the legislature. It's different from the president's party. They're playing a dangerous game on their defense budget. If anyone from Taiwan is watching this hearing, they need to realize they're playing a dangerous game.
Facing the very real risk of war, does cutting Taiwan's defense budget count as endangering Taiwan's security?
Maybe. Maybe not. Maybe fuck yourself.
那关于这件事情我还不确定耶，因为有可能国民党真的要帮台湾人把 budget 控制好。But these definitions are all determined by the U.S. House of Representatives. And H.R. 36 directly targets Georgia's national security and stability and specifically mentions China, Russia, and Iran in the bill. In other words, if you act favorably toward the CCP, pander towards the CCP, or shit, if you even follow the CCP on X, then this is considered a huge national security risk and calls for great instability. And as a result, the US is gonna sanction your ass.
Tight, yeah.
Tight and gangster as fuck. But I think this is exactly what the US needs to counter China, and it is targeted at any politician in any foreign country who likes to play footsies with the CCP. Now, it is important to note that this bill is only passed in the House, and it still has to get past the Senate and ultimately get on the president's desk before it becomes legit. But that's just me. What do you guys think? Do you support this bill? Or do you think this is an internal affair and the US should just mind their own goddamn business? Do you think it's important for the US to help maintain democracy around the world? Leave a comment down below. Remember to like, subscribe, get yourself some delicious banh mi hua with a 5% discount down below, and I will see you on the flip side. Peace!